All right. When we last stopped, we were reading about Montresor and Fortunato and how they had gone. Well, Montresor had kind of tricked Fortunato into going underneath his castle and going through the catacombs. He's taking him to get this bottle of Amontillado, which is why the title is The Cask of Amontillado. And so let's finish up the story and prepare you guys for talking about it in class. All right. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light did not enable us to see. Proceed, I said. Herein is the Amontillado. As for Letresi, he is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend as he stepped unsteadily forward. Remember, because he'd been drinking a lot, which I followed immediately at his heels, In an instant, he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. So basically, there's like a closet made by skeletons, and there's no fourth wall. So Montresor tricked Fortunato into going and looking inside of it. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. Fettered is a vocabulary word, which means like manacled or like held by chains. I can show you that in class if you guys still have questions. In its surface were two iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. Pass your hand, I said, over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No, then I must positively leave you, but I must first render you all the little attentions in my power. The Amontillado, ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. True, I replied, the Amontillado. There's no Amontillado, by the way. As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I have before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. So this guy's in this like solid closet with the fourth door open. So Montresor gets him inside and then reaches over, and he had hidden some like putty and stuff to build up the last wall. So he chains his friend inside and then just builds up that, steps out, and then just builds up that fourth wall. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier and the third and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the masonwork, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated, I trembled. That's kind of an important line, guys. For a second, he actually thought about maybe not doing it. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. Have you guys ever seen a movie where like somebody's screaming and then somebody else screams over them to make them shut up? Like that's basically what happened. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position. But now there came out from the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, okay, guys, I'm still not laughing for you, but haha, a very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo, over our wine, the Amontillado. Ha ha, yes, the Amontillado, but is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone. Yes, I said, let us be gone. For the love of God, Montresor. Yes, I said, for the love of God. But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, Fortunato. No answer. I called again, Fortunato. No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-elected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In pace recresat. Rest in peace. You look down here at the bottom. All right, we will go over maybe these questions, maybe some other questions in class, and that's about it. Now you can go back, you can reread this on your own, you can annotate it, you can make notes, but you can actually go back to where I read the sections and talked about them. And if you didn't understand it, just go back to the first one and start over. And eventually you will get it, and then we'll talk about it in class. Have a great day, guys.